I've got the 9 reasons why wrestlers fail, and if you want to make sure your career is heading in the right direction, you can't afford to skip a single one. I'm Mike Quackenbush, and this is Till We Make It. Across the last 30 years, I have worked in front of the cameras as a professional wrestler, referee, ring announcer, and commentator. And I have also worked behind the scenes in pro wrestling as a promoter, booker, agent, coach, consultant, and a bunch of other things. And I bring the sum total of all my experiences and I serve it up right here to you on Till We Make It. If you're down with that, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and join the Till We Make It tribe. Subscribe right now. And at the top, I want to shout out my newest patron. Welcome aboard, Mikey. I am pleased to be adding Mikey to my roll call of awesome patrons. And in next week's episode, it could be you that I'm shouting out. Come and be part of our community. Join our Patreon and support the work of Till We Make It. Jump on the link, which you'll find down below in the descriptus. These last few weeks, I've done a lot of reflecting on mistakes I've made. And boy, there have been plenty. Missteps, both large and small. And during this time, I've also reflected on mistakes I've observed others have made in wrestling, whether it's my proteges, my trainees, my clients, or just wrestlers I observe from afar. And by doing this, by going through this process, it has helped me to craft the list I want to share with you today. The 9 reasons why wrestling careers fail. From time to time, you may hear a lawnmower outside, and I want you to know I am powerless to stop this. Before we dive into the list, leave me a like-a-palooza. Gang, I need the engagement. Thanks for doing it, and here we go. The 9 reasons I've got for you comprise a fairly wide-ranging list. They're from all corners. The 7th one is the one I absolutely needed to get good at about 15 years before I got any good at it. But I'm putting this one number 1 on my list because I've seen all kinds of spiky takes on this all week long. So I wanted to address it and do it in terms that I could have understood when I was starting out. So this one is perhaps for 19-year-old me and any of you out there who didn't really hear the message, because boy, it sure was out there these last 6 days. Wrestlers fail when they are focused on the wrong things. So what might that mean? If you're spending what limited downtime you have endlessly scrolling through social media instead of studying wrestling from other parts of the globe or from other eras or from other styles, you are not focused on the right things. Because endlessly scrolling through social media will not advance your career one iota. Continuing and furthering your education in the craft, broadening your understanding of pro wrestling, that will. Spending what little disposable income you have on the newest shirt to be in the WWE shop is focusing on the wrong thing, because those dollars could be spent on getting a gym membership. Those dollars could be spent on upgrading your gear so you enhance your presentation in front of the audience. If you continuously focus your finite resources like time and money on the wrong things, you are setting yourself up for failure. Number 2, wrestlers fail when they don't position themselves for opportunity. If you're hearing that and you're thinking to yourself, what the heck does that mean, Mike? I'm going to explain it. If you live in the center of Wyoming, which is the least populous state in the entire United States, and you are wrestling once every 3 months in front of the same 11 fans, you really aren't positioning yourself for much opportunity. More times than not, you need to go where the opportunities are, because the opportunities aren't going to conveniently come to you. Just thinking back a little bit to the journey of the guy who is arguably my most famous protege, Claudio Castagnoli. When he moved to the United States some 20 years ago, when he came here to train with me, he did that because he knew there were greater opportunities in pro wrestling here in the United States than there were in his homeland of Switzerland. You've got to position yourself for opportunity because the opportunities rarely, if ever, just come to you. If you need to broaden your horizons, take your wrestling education to the next level, and optimize your chances of finding the success you want in professional wrestling, you need to join my Patreon. There's expert advice and insight dispensed over there, an exclusive video every Monday. Advice for wrestlers every Tuesday at 2:22 p.m. Over 900 exclusive posts on topics just like what you see down below right now on screen. They are all there waiting to be unlocked the moment that you join. If you are serious about finding success in pro wrestling, you need to come and join our community. The link to do so is down below. You know where. The third reason why wrestlers fail is lack of skill. Increasingly, especially in the last 6 years, there's been an attitude out there that at some point your training ends. That if you reach a certain benchmark, your time training is over. But if you aren't constantly honing new skills and sharpening the skills you already have, you are becoming obsolete. Remember, training is a lifestyle. It isn't a destination. Or as my maestro used to like to say, the moment you are done training, hang up your boots. You're done. Fourth is lack of context. Here's what I mean by this one. You need to have a fundamental understanding of certain elements of pro wrestling. Key among these is wrestling's global structure. You need to understand the differences between the independent level of wrestling and the corporate level of wrestling. You don't understand those differences, you're off to a rough start. If you want to go somewhere in wrestling, you've got to know who the high visibility players are in Japan, in Mexico, in Europe, in Australia. If you're trying to get somewhere, but you don't understand the steps in between, you're unlikely to reach that goal. Or in a best case scenario, you are leaving your chances for success up to blind luck. The next two on my list are closely related, and they're really powerful, so listen carefully. The first of these two is setting unrealistic expectations for the short term. Here's an example. I've absolutely met people coming into pro wrestling who think they're going to be having matches in a matter of weeks or at the end of their first month of training, and that's an unrealistic expectation. If you constantly set unrealistic expectations, you're gonna fail in your career. It's far more realistic to spend a year or two training before you have your first match. And while yes, every once in a great while, there's an exception to that rule, they are rare exceptions. And I bet you can guess the other one. It's setting unrealistic expectations over the long term. You need to know, if you are setting up long-term expectations for yourself, which hinge on the decisions of others, you are setting yourself up for failure. And here's an example of that. If you decide that my goal is to win 20 championships by the time I turn 30 years old, I want you to know that's an unrealistic expectation because it's one over which you can exert no control. So unless you start your own wrestling organization and you book yourself to win all of those championships, your ability to achieve that goal will hinge on decisions made by other people. And I want to discourage anybody watching from setting goals for themselves over which they can exert no control whatsoever. The seventh reason is a real pain point, believe me, I know. Wrestlers fail when they don't spend enough time developing their professional networks. Yes, you need to be networking. Yes, you need to be making connections with other people that work in wrestling. If you ever hope to ascend to one of the top spots in professional wrestling, and you think that's going to happen simply on the basis of delivering consistently great matches in the ring, let me dispel that mistaken notion for you right now. You ever notice how many of the people who occupy those most coveted spots in pro wrestling are basically average once the bell rings? They are passable. They aren't consistently outstanding. They're not excellent between the bells. If you are chasing one of those coveted, one of those competitively sought after spots in professional wrestling, what you need to understand is this. The strength of your professional network will open more doors and present you with more opportunities than being the internet flavor of the week or all those terrific 5-star matches ever will. This one's an absolute career killer. You will fail if you give yourself free passes. You know what I mean by this? Here's some examples of you giving yourself a free pass. Well, I don't have to master the flip bump. I'm never going to use that one. Or I don't need to get good at the leapfrog. I'll just avoid that whenever I'm in the ring. Or I'm not going to get good at cutting promos because once I get signed to a contract gig, they'll just assign a mouthpiece who'll cut all the promos for me while I'm in the ring. These are examples of you giving yourself free passes. And if you do this consistently, you are headed for failure. Yesterday was a rather painful anniversary when I marked the passing of a dear friend of mine. And so this one, which happens to be last on my list, is not least by any stretch of the imagination. Do not neglect your mental health. We spend so much of our time and energy focusing on our physical health, our cosmetic shape, our fitness, etc. in wrestling. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if we're doing it at the complete expense of our mental health, I think things are out of balance. Take it from someone who knows from firsthand experience. You need to mind your mental health. Please take care of yourself. Anyone who's listening to this who works in professional wrestling, you must tend to your mental health with the same seriousness that you tend to your physical health. Neglecting that will lead to some type of failure or dysfunction that can spiral right out of your career into the rest of your life. Please take care of yourselves. Did I miss anything? Is there something we should add to this list? Will you tell me about it down below in the comments, please? Appearing on screen right now is an entire video I did about free passes in wrestling, looking at it from a variety of different angles. So if you want to crack that one open deeper, click on that video right now or click on the box with the P in it and you'll head directly over to my Patreon. I would love to have you join us.